Who exactly is Behemoth, the creature God points to and calls the first of my works? The book of Job describes a beast with bones like bronze and limbs like iron bars. He eats grass like an ox, yet no human can control him. His tail moves like a cedar tree, and when rivers rage around him, he does not even flinch. Not a myth, not a children's story, a real creature God turns into a living sermon to break a righteous man's pride. Most Christians have heard of Leviathan. Almost no one can actually describe Behemoth. Picture this: the ground under your feet starts to shake. Tall reeds by the river fold flat. A grey wall of muscle rises out of the marsh, legs like pillars driving into the mud. It tears up whole carpets of grass in a single bite. Then you see the tail, not a rope or a whip, but a moving tree trunk, and is swinging through the air like a cedar. If that thing decides to charge, there is nowhere you can run fast enough. The Bible says God pointed at that animal and said to Job, "Look at Behemoth, which I made with you. He is the first of my works." So who or what is this Behemoth? A hippo, an elephant, some extinct giant, or something far stranger? And why did God choose this beast to confront a broken man who had lost everything? To see that, we have to drop into the exact moment when God says those words to Job. Job's story starts far from the riverbank. It ends with God forcing his eyes toward that riverbank. Job is introduced as a man who actually fears God and turns away from evil. A man with a clean reputation and a full house. Then, in a single brutal season, he loses almost everything: his wealth, his health, even his children. But the man who used to stand and pray now sits in ashes, covered in sores, wondering why a God he has served so carefully feels like he has turned against him. So he starts doing what we do. He wants answers. Again and again he cries out, "Explain yourself. Tell me why a just man is being treated like this." He is not an atheist, he is a believer in pain, and he wants God to come down into the courtroom of his suffering and take the witness stand. Instead, God brings a storm. The Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind, not as a soft inner feeling, but in thunder and wind, as if creation itself leans in to listen. And God does not start with, "Here is why your children died," or "Let me tell you what Satan has been doing." He starts with questions that remind Job who is God and who is dust. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Do you command the morning? Do you send the lightning? Question after question strips Job back down to his real size. His boldness melts. "I am unworthy," he says. "How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth." And then once Job is finally quiet, God narrows the focus. He moves from the architecture of the universe to the creatures that roam it, and he saves his strangest illustration for last. As the storm still roars around them, God points to a single towering beast and says, "Behold now Behemoth, which I made with you." Now we return to the valley. "Behold," God says. Not remember, as if it were a myth, but look. Consider. Study. Let your mind run its fingers over the contours of this beast. "Behold now Behemoth, which I made as I made you. He eats grass like an ox." First detail. It is a grazer, not a hunter. A colossal vegetarian. This is not a predator with blood on its jaws. It is a walking hill of muscle content to strip the field bare. That, in itself, is a mercy. A creature that size that loved flesh would empty valleys of life. Imagine the appetite. How much grass does a creature like that need each day just to maintain its bulk? How many hillsides must bend under its slow, methodical feeding? The mountains, God says, bring him food, as if entire landscapes are his pantry. All the while wild animals play nearby. They are not his prey. They are tiny neighbours having to make peace with his shadow. See now, his strength is in his loins, and his power is in the muscles of his belly. God draws Job's attention to its core, not its teeth, not its claws, its loins, its belly. This is where its power lives. You can picture what that looks like, the thick cords of muscle bunching and stretching under thick skin. When it lies down, The earth seems to exhale with it. When it stands, everything near it feels the shift of weight. You could strike its flank, and your hand would ache, and the creature would not even notice. He moves his tail like a cedar. This is the phrase that has troubled and fascinated readers for centuries. Cedars are the giants of the tree world in that region, straight, tall, imposing. God does not say that Behemoth's tail is like a twig or a rope. He chooses the word cedar. You know what the tail of an elephant looks like? Thin and switch-like, ending in a little brush of hair. You know what a hippopotamus tail looks like? Short, muscular, almost comical, flicking and swatting. No one standing in a valley, filled with awe, would look at those and say, "It moves like a cedar tree." However you identify Behemoth, you must wrestle with this image. A tail that has weight, presence, a kind of slow majesty when it moves, like a tree bending in the wind, and then swinging back. When that tail sweeps through reeds, they flatten. When it crashes accidentally into a sapling, the sapling snaps. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. God invites Job to imagine the craftsmanship inside the beast, the twisted, braided tendons, the muscles bound so tightly together that they move as one. When Behemoth plants his foot, those sinews pull in harmony like ropes on a great ship. Nothing about this creature is flimsy or fragile. His bones are tubes of bronze, his limbs like bars of iron. This is poetry, but it is poetry that points to density. Imagine you could strip away the muscle and see only the skeleton. Each rib is like a bronze pipe, each leg bone like an iron pillar. This is not a delicate thing that can be dropped with a few arrows. The weight of its own bones makes it slow to fall and quick to crush. He is the first of the works of God. This is the line where the theology deepens. First here does not mean first in time, as if Behemoth were created before light itself. It means chief, principal, at the top of a category. Of all the beasts God has made that walk on land, this one stands as the masterpiece. Well, the flagship, the exhibit A of brute created power. Think of that. When God thinks, which land creature best displays my sheer creative might, he does not pick the lion or the bear. He picks this enormous herbivore standing in the marshes, this living hill with a cedar for a tail. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. Here is the humbling point. If you and I brought every weapon we possess, every spear, every trap, every method of hunting, it would not be enough. Humans have killed many large animals through patience and ingenuity, yet God says that with Behemoth, there is a line no man can cross. Only the Maker has that right. Only the Maker can truly threaten him. Surely the mountains yield food for him where all the beasts of the field play. Under the lotus plants he lies, in the shelter of the reeds and in the marsh. The lotus plants cover him with their shade, the willows of the brook surround him. God paints Behemoth at rest, not rampaging, not killing, just existing in a scale that bends the world around it. Hills provide his meals. Trees that would shade a whole group of people are simply his parasol. He lies down, half hidden, yet still enormous, under a roof of branches and leaves. You can almost hear the water lapping, see the insects buzzing around his hide, feel the damp heat. No predator disturbs him. No human dares to poke him awake. Behold, if the river is turbulent, he is not frightened. He is confident, though the Jordan rushes against his mouth. Can one take him by his eyes, or pierce his nose with a snare? Pour a flood against him, he does not panic. Put a roaring current where he drinks, he does not step back. He is unmoved. The Jordan, once a barrier to Israel, once a miracle crossing, is to him a strong but manageable stream. You cannot sneak up and blind him. You cannot drive a hook through his nose and lead him home like a docile ox. This entire description is given for one purpose. God wants Job to feel in his gut what it is like to be a tiny human standing in front of a creature so far beyond his capacity that his weapons are laughable. He wants Job to feel his own smallness again, but this time through awe, not accusation. Now, of course, we ask the question everyone asks. What creature is this? Some have said, clearly, this is the hippopotamus. It was well known in biblical times, or especially in Egypt. It fits the marsh, the reeds, the river, the grass diet, the danger. A hippo is massively strong, quick when it chooses to be, capable of tearing boats and people apart. Its gaping jaws make a memorable image. It is a plausible candidate. Others point to the elephant. The Hebrew word suggests a large, four-footed beast, and the elephant, with its size, power, and presence, fits that. Its stomach muscles are impressive. Its appetite is immense. It was known in the ancient world, and certainly inspired fear and respect. Then you set these options next to the description, and problems emerge. The tail, again, refuses to cooperate. A hippo's tail is short and flat, more like a muscular paddle used to spread dung. An elephant's tail is long, but thin. Neither is cedar-like. The picture God paints for Job is of a tail that commands attention, a moving wooden beam. There is also the problem of control. Humans have, throughout history, hunted hippos and used them as symbols of danger, but they have also managed them, driven them away, and killed them in numbers. Elephants, likewise, have been hunted, captured, and even domesticated. War elephants marched in ancient armies. They were not easy to manage, but they were not untouchable. Behemoth is different. The language God uses suggests a creature fundamentally beyond human mastery. Only he who made him can approach with the sword. Can anyone capture him when he is on watch? It is as if the text is insisting, whatever this is, it is out of your league, because of this. Some interpreters have wondered if Behemoth could be a memory of an animal we no longer see, perhaps some kind of enormous sauropod-like creature, a long-necked, long-tailed giant whose bones we now study as fossils. In that case, Job would be hearing God describe something that he or his culture had encountered or at least heard of that has since vanished. Others suggest that Behemoth is not meant to match one creature exactly, but to function as a divinely inspired composite. Like a verbal statue, carved from different features of real animals, heightened and fused to create the ultimate land beast. If so, the question, what species is this, is less important than, what is God trying to make Job feel, and what is God trying to make Job see about himself and about his Creator? The Bible does not resolve this argument. It leaves Behemoth slightly out of reach, a shadow with sharp edges, enough to stir imagination but not enough to satisfy curiosity. And that might be intentional. Our urge is to pin it down like a specimen. God's urge is to use it as a mirror. However we answer the "who really is Behemoth" question on the biological level, the theological answer is clear. Behemoth is the land creature God chose when he wanted to humble a man who was trying to put the Almighty in the dock. There is a deeper layer still. The same scriptures that say, God created the heavens and the earth, also say, through him all things were made, and without him nothing was made that has been made. The him in that sentence is the Word who was with God and was God, the one who became flesh and dwelt among us, Jesus Christ. The Apostle Paul says that by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, thrones and powers and rulers and authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. The writer of Hebrews tells us that God created the universe through this Son, and that this Son sustains all things by his powerful word. That means when God talks about Behemoth, he is not merely an observer admiring a creature. He is the engineer describing his own work. Every tendon in Behemoth's thighs, every bronze-like bone, every cedar-like tail movement exists because the eternal word chose its length and thickness and purpose. Job does not know the name of Jesus yet, but the voice speaking from the storm is the same voice that will one day command storms to be still on the Sea of Galilee. The hand that could, with a thought, bring Behemoth to its knees is the hand that will later be pierced. When God says, only he who made him can approach him with a sword, he is hinting at a truth that runs through the entire Bible, The Creator alone has the right to judge and the power to save. So what is God doing with Job? Job has accused Wood of mismanaging justice. He has hinted that he could run the world more fairly. God's answer is not, "How dare you speak?" It is, "Come, let me show you something you cannot even stand next to. Let me introduce you to Behemoth, and then let us talk about whether you are in a position to audit my decisions." After Behemoth, God takes Job's eyes to the sea and speaks about Leviathan, a fearsome aquatic creature whose scales are like armour, whose breath is described in fiery terms, whose power makes warriors tremble. In other scriptures, Leviathan becomes a symbol of chaos, of proud empires, even a figure that hints at Satan, that ancient serpent who opposes God and persecutes his people. In Job, Leviathan functions as Behemoth's twin in the water. Between them they dominate land and sea. The point is the same in both cases. If you cannot put a hook in Leviathan's jaw and lead him like a pet, if you cannot climb on Behemoth's back and ride him like a horse, then what makes you think you are in a position to haul God into court and demand that he explain every providence? Behemoth and Leviathan, taken together, are humbling, but in this conversation, the first and central figure is Behemoth. God says, "Behold him, I made him with you." He anchors Job's attention on a creature made of dust, like Job, yet unimaginably stronger. He wants Job to feel, in his own body, how small he is, and then to transfer that awareness upward to the God who is not just bigger than Behemoth, but who invented the idea of Behemoth. This is not cruelty, this is mercy. Left to ourselves, we imagine we are larger than we are. A few decades of life, a bit of knowledge, a bit of pain, and suddenly we feel qualified to rewrite the rules of the universe. Suffering does that. It can shrink our view of God and inflate our view of our own insight. We think, if I cannot see any good reason for this, there must be none. God's answer to Job is to restore scale. He does not promise that Job will understand every detail of his story. He does not pretend that what happened to Job is light or easy. He does something else. He shows Job something he cannot control, and reminds him that he, God, stands infinitely above even that. You have your own behemoths. They are not animals. They might be diagnoses that appear on cold white paper, words like incurable or malignant. They might be debts that loom over your future, numbers that feel too heavy to ever pay back. They might be betrayals that shattered a family you thought was safe, or fears about your children, or the ache of unanswered prayers. These things stand in front of you and make you feel like you did in that valley, watching the reeds part, feeling the ground shake. You are small, you are not in control. You cannot manage this with your cleverness or your strength. In those moments, you might find yourself praying like Job. Explain yourself. Why this? Why now? Why me? You might feel the temptation to put God on trial, to accuse him of mishandling your life. God's answer, in the book of Job, is not to hand us the script from the heavenly meeting rooms. He does not always show us the conversation in the throne room before our suffering began. Instead, he points us to his works and says, "Look, do you see who I am? Do you see what I can do? Do you see that there are things in this world and in your life you cannot even stand against, and yet I am their maker? Do you see that you are not alone with your behemoth?" Job is told earlier, "Ask the animals, and they will teach you. Ask the birds of the air, they will tell you. Speak to the earth, it will teach you. The fish of the sea will declare to you." Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this, the in whose hand is the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind? The Apostle Paul echoes this when he says that since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. Creation is not wallpaper, it is a classroom. Behemoth is one of its loudest teachers. What does Behemoth teach? First, it teaches that there are real limits to human power. We live in an age that has captured images of galaxies, split atoms, mapped genomes. Yet there are still things that a single human, standing alone, cannot face and win. Behemoth is a reminder that you are not God, and that is not an insult. It is a relief. You are not expected to hold the universe together. You are not equipped to run the world. You are a creature, and it is good that this is so. Second, it teaches that God is not threatened by anything in his creation. The strongest beast you can imagine is still, to him, an artwork, a piece of craftsmanship, a servant. He can say only he who made him can bring near his sword, because his strength is not the next step up from Behemoth. It is on a completely different scale. The gap between you and Behemoth is nothing compared to the gap between Behemoth and God. Third, it teaches that God sometimes answers our deepest questions, not with explanations, but with himself. Job wanted to know why. God showed him who. We often resist that. We want reasons, timelines, guarantees. God offers presence, power, character. He says, look at what I make, and then trust me. In the end, Job does not get a TED talk on the problem of evil. He gets a whirlwind and a tour of the zoo, and somehow that is enough. After God speaks of Behemoth and Leviathan, after he has paraded his power and wisdom through creation, Job finally breaks. I know that you can do all things, he says, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself, and repent in dust and ashes. The man who started this book demanding explanations ends it resting in revelation. He moves from trying to manage God's reputation to simply bowing before God's reality. The sight of Behemoth and the sound of God's voice have done what arguments could not do. They have broken his pride and healed his trust at the same time. And behind Behemoth stands the greater mystery. The creator who spoke this beast into being, who measured out its bones and tail and appetite, will one day step into his creation as a man. The one who says only he who made him can bring near his sword will one day allow a sword to pierce his own side, nails to pierce his hands and feet. The one who humbled Job will one day humble himself to death on a cross. We do not know all the reasons for our suffering. We do not see all that happens in the unseen realm. Job never heard about the conversation in heaven that began his trial, and you may never hear about the hidden purposes behind yours. But you can stand in that valley, in your mind, and watch the reeds move, feel the ground tremble and hear God say, "Behold now, Behemoth, which I made with you." And then you can ask a better question. Not, why did you make him? But, who are you that you can make such a thing? And still hear the fragile prayer of someone like me. If you stood today in front of such a creature, feeling its breath, hearing its footfalls, knowing you could not take a single step that would save you if it charged, would you really feel qualified to lecture its maker on how to run the world? Or would you, like Job, put your hand over your mouth and whisper, "I am unworthy. You are God, I am not." The next time you hear the word behemoth, do not just think huge animal. Think of a God who can humble the proud with a single creature, who delights in his works, who writes sermons in the muscles and bones of beasts, and who invites you not to solve him, but to trust him, who really is the behemoth. On one level, perhaps we will argue about that until we see the new creation with our own eyes. On the level that matters most, we already know. Behemoth is the first of the works of God on land, the great beast in whose shadow a suffering man finally understood how small he was and how great his maker is. And if, in your own valley, watching your own behemoth approach, that truth takes root in your heart, then this strange creature has done for you what it did for Job. It has led you out of accusation and into awe. Thank you for walking this journey with me. May God bless you richly, and may your quiet faith, even when unseen, always be remembered in his presence. I'll see you soon.